Alright, so before we start, let's talk about that coffee cup that was on the table in the Hall of Winterfell that everyone is flipping out about. I don't give a shit, neither should you. Let's go. So here we are, another week and another episode of Game of Thrones with spoilers. As you know, these reviews have spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, you don't need to see it. It's a really shit episode, actually. So yeah, getting the cat out of the bag, this episode is absolutely despicable. It's a despicable episode. You are not the first episode of a season. You should not be setting up. You should tell a story. You should also not have characters acting out of character, especially when that is so out of character that you basically destroy everything that your characters have been developed as and have been growing as for 7 fucking seasons. Let's talk about the biggest offender of this, which is Dany, because for the most part in this episode, Dany is really sad. Ser Jorah, her best friend-zoned friend, just died in the last episode. She's really depressed. Now the love of her life, second love of her life, alright. Jon Snow, aka Aegon Targaryen the 6th. I always forget if it's the 6th or the 7th. The 6th, he's now pondering on whether he tells his sisters/cousins if he is a Targaryen. Daenerys is pleading with him not to tell him. Her whole journey through life, discovering herself, growing to become this queen leader, a good leader by the way. Yes, she's a good leader, sorry not sorry. She's pleading with him not to tell them, but she's not actually demanding anything from him. She's not acting in this arrogant type of way that everyone just assumes she will. She is pleading with him, asking him a favor, just to let this slide. She needs the throne. It's everything she's ever known. And Jon says no, because he has to tell at least his sisters, but he doesn't care for the throne, so that's a good thing. So we're skipping ahead here. Eventually, Daenerys and part, at least, of her army fly to King's Landing, and Rhaegal just dies. Like that. He dies. One of the dragons is dead. There's only one dragon left. I mean, they didn't kill a fucking dragon in Battle of Winterfell, but now they just kill one just like that. Killing characters for shock's sake is not a good way to tell a story. Let me tell you this episode is really well directed. The script is the real problem. It's like this is a shitty story told really well. So yeah, they make shocking things happen for shock's sake, and eventually Daenerys' fleet, the fleet at least that is going to King's Landing, gets bombarded with these arrows that explode the ships, and everyone goes out into the sea, and eventually they come up on the beach, but Missandei is missing. Cersei kidnapped Missandei. She's got Missandei hostage. How does she have Missandei hostage and she has no one else? If she could get Missandei, I'm sure she could get, I don't know, fucking Tyrion? The hand of the queen, maybe? Maybe Grey Worm? The leader of the fucking Unsullied? I mean, I'm sorry, I love Missandei just as much as the next guy, but for Cersei, in strategic terms, there are many more important people than Missandei on that area. On the area that got out of the ships and into the sea that she could have kidnapped. So what's the sitch? So eventually Cersei being Cersei, it's probably the one character that acts in consistency with her character, and now she has been developed. So Cersei, she kills Missandei, even after Tyrion pleads with her, which is a really great scene, by the way. Now Daenerys is mad, and I see everyone flipping out that the show has been built around the part that she is not supposed to be her dad, blah blah. That's the thing when it comes to prophecies. You can always lean one way or the other, and you're never wrong, you're never right. I have many people saying to me that this episode is just a swerve and they're going to go on a complete opposite direction next week. And I hope they're right. Because to me it makes no sense. The Missandei dying in front of Daenerys thing, Daenerys is now going mad, that should be like the last drop, and that is the ultimate punch to the gut that leads Daenerys into going mad. But the rest of the stuff until then just doesn't work, because she's reacting in a completely different manner now in the end than she does throughout this episode. Throughout this episode, that is Daenerys. Yeah, sure. And now, boom, it's a complete swerve, and why? It makes no sense. the Daenerys throughout the episode is the grown Daenerys. The Daenerys that has learned, that is unsure, that is flawed as a human, as a queen, as a leader, and that just saw one of her sons fucking die. Now this is just a little girl that I know from season 1, and it doesn't make sense. Okay, so speaking of other character, let's talk about Bronn. Bronn of, I don't remember the surname that they give him, who gives a shit. So he comes to Winterfell secretly, nobody freaking saw him. He comes with this huge crossbow, and he's going to threaten Jaime and Tyrion, because he's actually telling them about Cersei's plan, and he just wants a bigger reward. He wants Highgarden. And so he punches Tyrion and threatens them and actually shoots right beside Jaime to really make a point. And again, that is out of character. Bronn is the most chilled character ever in Game of Thrones history. He would never give himself that much work. Here's how that should have happened. Bronn would have come in with a crossbow to swerve us. That's a good swerve right there. He would have come in with a crossbow, look at them very threateningly, and then puts the crossbow down on the table, sits down very relaxingly, fills up a huge cup of wine for himself and starts drinking, and just tells them, hey lads, so Cersei wants this, and I don't want to work for her, as you know, because I love you guys. He wouldn't say that, obviously, but... And then he tells them that, just give me Highgarden when you win this war, alright? I'm just not going to fight, because that's freaking Sir Bronn. That's who Bronn is. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't want to fight, because that's way too much work for him. I like the scenes with Jaime and Brienne in this episode, not gonna lie. I like that they have sex with each other. They basically deliver themselves to one another. But then when Jaime decides to go to King's Landing, I don't mind that Brienne asks him to stay. I just minded how she acted in that moment. It didn't feel very Brienne. It's okay for her to be in love with Jaime. That didn't come across right in her character. I just didn't like how she pleaded with Jaime to stay. I think it makes total sense for her to plead Jaime to stay, just not in the way that it happened. On the other hand, I really like how Gendry acted upon being named Sir Gendry Baratheon of Storm's End, and he goes to ask Arya to marry him and whatnot, and it's a great scene, and it makes total sense for this character. As it makes total sense for the MVP of the show right now, Arya acting consistently with her character and saying no, and eventually she goes with the Hound to King's Landing, because hopefully we are getting the Clegane Bowl next week. Or maybe even in the last episode. There's only 2 episodes left, so I really have no idea. Let's talk about, again, out of character, because the writers of this show do not like Ghost. The fucking dog lost an ear last week, apparently. But, I mean, I only found out today in this episode, because we didn't see Ghost coming back. But yeah, Ghost lost an ear, and Jon is going to King's Landing. He doesn't know if he's coming back. There's a high chance that... Does he know if he's going to die or not? He doesn't. He might die for all he knows. And he just looks at Ghost and he's like... See ya. Doesn't even give him one pet. One fucking pet. What the fuck did this dog do to Jon Snow? Or better yet, what did a dog do to someone who writes this show? Because it's gotta be a personal vendetta. They do nothing with Sansa. The only thing new that was given to Sansa's character in this episode was the secret that Jon Snow revealed to them in the Old Wood, with Sansa, Arya, and Bran, and Jon all together, and Jon is going to tell him, but they cut as he's about to tell them. Sansa's a great character, is one of your best developed characters throughout the entire show, and you do nothing with her in this episode. Basically nothing happened until the last 10 minutes where we cram in 2 major deaths. One of them really bothered me, another one not so much, but we consistently have characters that are not acting like themselves. Oh! Big, important point that I almost forgot. Even characters within this very show recognize how petty, childish, and fucking pathetic it is for Dany and Jon to be fighting over who keeps the throne. There's this conversation that I loved between Tyrion and Varys. And they're talking about, oh, Daenerys is not the legitimate heir anymore. Aegon Targaryen, aka Jon Snow, is. And Varys is seeing that Daenerys is starting to crumbling down psychologically, and is acting more and more like her dad, which is bullshit at that point in the show. And so they start discussing what Varys actually defends. What is the realm? It's the people. We don't know their names, but they deserve to live just as much as any of us. And at one point, as they're discussing the level of Daenerys' sanity, Varys says she doesn't want to share the throne, and Tyrion retorts with, neither did any monarch serving as king or queen until this very day. I'm sure nobody ever liked sharing the throne, but as you start sharing the throne, there's nothing wrong with it. You're still the queen, and the other person is the king, or vice versa. So why not just open up that in the conversation? At least give me a justification, writers of the show, why Dany and Jon wouldn't at least think about that. Just have a scene where they're talking with each other and they bring this point up. Whether you solve this like that, the way I'm thinking, or you don't, I just want logically for them to see that this is a possibility. They haven't even addressed it, and that's what annoys me the most. So yeah, a really shitty episode, like a season 2 level of shitty episode. Season 2 is the worst season of the show, by the way. And people are comparing this to episode 2 of the season, and those people are just, I mean, they're nuts. I mean, respect their opinions, but they're fucking nuts. They're fucked up in the head. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this episode of Game of Thrones. I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope every complaint that I had about this episode come next week basically crumbles to the ground, and I have to swallow my pride and tell you next week, I was so wrong. I love this show again. I really hope I have to say that. Those are my thoughts on this episode. Very scrambled, I know. I lost all enthusiasm with this episode, so 2 episodes left. Let's see what they have in store for us. And until the next video, guys, thank you so much once again for watching. Stay beautiful, stay geeky, and if you haven't done so yet, click the subscribe button and click the bell so we can be geeky. Unite!